So the poet Vyasa and the elephant-headed god Ganesha were sitting together in the forest, and Vyasa was speaking aloud his great poem of the world. And so Vyasa said, "Once a king went hunting in a forest. This king was named Shantanu, and before long he found the tracks of a deer. And he followed these tracks until he saw the deer itself, and he ran after this deer, pursuing it through the forest to the edge of the great river Ganges. And there the deer paused, browsing in grass, and the king, Shantanu, pulled an arrow from his quiver, fitted it to his bow, pulled it back, and let it go. Shunk! It went right into the heart of that deer. The deer leapt once, twice, and then collapsed in the shallows of the great river. Shantanu went to the deer. He bent down to pull his arrow out. As he did so, he heard a rippling, rustling sound from the river, and he looked, and there was a beautiful woman stepping from the river, coming right out of it, first her head, then her shoulders, then her hips, then her knees, and then she was standing there sparkling on the shore. And the drops of water, as they glided lazily down her body, each one seemed to adore her. And Shantanu said, "Woman, goddess, if that is what you are, I am a king without a queen, but seeing you my heart fills with love. My dear, shall we not be man and wife? Shall we not be king and queen, my dear? Please say yes." She looked at him, and she said, "Oh, my king, so easily you would throw your heart down under the bonfire of love?" "Yes," he said, "1,000 times yes. My body, my voice, my heart says yes. Please, my dear." She looked at him, and she said, "I am Gunga, the goddess of the great river Ganges, the sacred river. Long I have watched you from my bed rippling past. I have seen you in the forest and in your great palace of Hastinapura. You are a fine man, a strong, a beautiful, a glorious man. I would happily be your queen. I would happily be your love. But if we are to be married, there is one thing you must agree to, and it is this. You must never question a single action that I take. Can you agree to that?" Shantanu thought for a moment, and then he said yes. "Yes, my dear, yes, my love, I agree." So they came together, she kissed his lips, and they enjoyed the delights of love beside the river as the river went rippling past. And then they went to the palace in the city of Hastinapura in the land of the Kurus. And soon enough they were married in the palace garden, a beautiful ceremony beneath the large spreading mango tree in the palace garden. And the bards sang, and the old beautiful words were said, the old words which are fresh and new and happening now and shall be, and they were and they are forever. And they were married, and she was crowned king, she was crowned queen of that kingdom. And sometime later she gave birth to a baby boy, a lovely, delightful baby boy. And not long after the birth, she, Gunga, and her king, her love, Shantanu, were walking along the side of this river, and she was holding the baby in her arms. And then, as they walked, she took a step out into the water, and then another, and then she lifted the baby up high and threw him down into the waves. Psh! He cried out once, he cried out a second time, and then the child cried no more. And Shantanu gasped. He went to her. He wanted to scream, to say something, but he said, "No, do not ask, do not question, or you will lose the one you love." So he stifled his cries. He said nothing. And she walked, smiling, from the river. And she took his hands in her own. And they walked back to the palace in the city of Hastinapura. This was a deep sorrow for Shantanu, who wanted so to be a father, who knew children were needed to carry the family forward into the future. But he swallowed this sorrow, and after a while it passed. Well, a year later, Gunga gave birth to another baby boy, a beautiful baby boy, and as before, not long after the birth, they went walking beside the sacred river. And she walked a few steps out into the water, and she lifted the baby up high and threw him down. Psh! And the child cried out once, cried out a second time, and then cried no more. And King Shantanu, he was, oh, please don't stop. He was going to say something, but he said nothing. And he said, do not ask, do not question, or you will lose the one you love. And she walked from the waves and took his hands and smiled and kissed him on the cheek. And they went back to the palace in the city of Hastinapura. Well, this happened 7 times. 7 times over 7 years she gave birth to children, all sons, baby boys, that she then drowned soon afterwards in the waters of the sacred Ganges. Finally, an 8th child was born to them, an 8th son. And as before, soon after the birth, they went walking along the shore. And as before, she took a few steps out into the water. She lifted the child up high, and King Shantanu said, no, stop, wait, do not kill our child, do not kill our child. She did not kill the child. She did not drown the baby, but came walking back to him and said, my king, my love, now I must leave you forever. But why, he said, why have you killed all of our children in this river? And Gunga said, once there were 8 gods, and they all sought after the magical cow of a seer named Vasishta. This magical cow was craved by all of them, so they stole this magical cow. Now the seer Vasishta, he knew with his divine vision that these gods had stolen it, so he cursed them to be reborn here on the earth, in this realm of mud and sweat, back in the grinding meat wheel of creation. So it was. But they came to me before they were incarnated on the earth, and they implored me to be their mother, to give birth to them here on this earth, and to kill them as soon as possible, so that they might quickly return to the celestial realms where the gods live. So I agreed to this, and I have come through. I have done this. I have drowned all of them, and they have all gone back to the celestial realms. All that is, except for one, this child. He shall be a glorious man. He will be schooled in the Vedas. He will protect Dharma, which is the order of the universe. He will be a magical man and a great warrior, and he shall be named Bhishma. And she gave the baby to King Shantanu. He took the baby boy in his arms. Hello, little man, hello. Looked down at him. And then he heard a rippling, rustling sound from the river, and he looked. She was walking back into the water. Goodbye, he said, goodbye. She turned and looked at him. Goodbye, my king. Goodbye, my love. And she walked back into the water. First her knees went under, then her hips, then her shoulders, and then her head, and she was gone. And then there was only the wild river rippling past. But King Shantanu looked down at his son. You are my son. You are my son, he said. And proudly, happily, with the tears drying on his cheeks, he returned to the palace of Hastinapura. And years passed, and though Shantanu was a king without a queen, he had a son, Bhishma. And Bhishma was schooled in the Vedas, and he was schooled in Dharma, which is the harmony of this world. And he was schooled in the arts of the sword and the bow and the spear, all the things a young prince should know. And he grew up to be a fine young man. But King Shantanu was still a king without a queen. So one day he went hunting in the forest. And on this day he found a boar, well, the tracks of a boar, and he followed this boar through the forest here and there, following the tracks closer and closer to this boar. But all of a sudden, as he was in the green riot and thicket of that forest, he smelled something very sweet. Something he would rarely smell in a forest. It smelled like roses. So he gave up on the boar and instead followed that smell, tracking it as you might track a river to its source. He followed that delightful, sweet smell through the forest until he came to the Yamuna River. And he came to a kingdom of 1,000 islands, and he came to the shore, and at that shore there was a ferry, and in that ferry there was a young woman, and she smelled of roses. Good day, king, she said. Would you like to cross this water?" "Yes, I would," he said. And he got in that fairy, and she took a long pole and pushed off from the shore, and they began to glide across the waters. And as they floated across that river, they talked. And as they talked, they told their stories, and as they told their stories, they fell in love. So by the time they got to the other shore, it was all decided. They would be man and woman, husband and wife, king and queen. Her name was Satyavati, and she was lovely, and she smelled of roses, and she was the daughter of the king of the fishermen. So Shantanu and Satyavati, when the fairy got to the other shore, they went to the palace of the king of the fishermen, a wild place with boats here and pikes here and nets all over and blue stone and crab shells with jewels in them on the walls. They went to the throne room. They walked through the rippling stones. They were blue, but they looked like they rippled. They looked like they were made of water. And with that salty air around them, they went to the throne room, and King Shantanu said, "King, I have fallen in love with your daughter Satyavati, so I have come to ask for her hand in marriage." And the king of the fishermen said, "Ah, King Shantanu, it is good to see you here. You are a wise and a good king, a beautiful and a glorious man. It would be a happy day if you would marry my daughter. However, if you are to do this, well, there's one thing I think you must agree to. Because the thing is, you have a son, a glorious son everyone has heard of, Bhishma, who was schooled in the Vedas and in Dharma and in the arts of the warrior. Yes, he's a glorious son. And he is destined to claim the throne, I believe. So, if Satyavati and you are to have children, what will they inherit? Nothing. Nothing at all for my descendants. So, I say this, if you are going to marry my daughter, you must first swear that Bhishma will not have a claim on the throne. He will not assume the kingship, and that only my descendants will inherit the land of the Kurus." "Give up on my son?" said Shantanu. "Tell him that he has no claim on the throne? How can I do that?" "Well, that's the question," said the king of the fishermen. So sadly, King Shantanu went back to the fairy with Satyavati. They were holding hands, and she wept, and they got on that fairy, and she pushed off, and it floated across those waters. And she wept, and he wept as they talked, and they talked about the sadness of this moment. And by the time they got to the other shore, well, it was goodbye. "Goodbye, Satyavati. Goodbye, my love," he said. And she said goodbye, and off he went into the forest. And soon enough, he returned to his palace in the land of the Kurus, in the city of Hastinapura. And he was a sad king, people could tell, but few of his attendants said anything. Until one night, Bhishma was there, found him in the palace garden beside the great reflecting pool, the water reflecting the stars reflected in the water. And Bhishma said, "Father, what is troubling you so?" And King Shantanu said, "My son, I have fallen in love with Satyavati, the daughter of the king of the fishermen. But the thing is, I will only marry her, so her father says, if you agree to have no claim on the kingdom. And how can I ask you to do that, my son, my dear son?" And Bhishma said, "Father, love is a power of this world. It must be honored. So I say we honor this power of love. I am ready to give up all claim to the kingdom. I will swear to do that." "My son," said Shantanu, "that is very generous of you, it is. But the thing is, if you were ever to have children, they would have a claim on the throne. This is the way politics works. So there would be fighting between the children I might have with Satyavati and your children. There would be squabbling, fighting. There might even be a war. And war destroys Dharma and brings sorrow to this earth. We must avoid a war." "Yes," said Bhishma, "we must avoid war. And so I say here and now, I give up all claim to the kingdom, and what's more, I give up forever the love of woman. Do you hear me, you gods, you mountains, rivers, and stars of this world? I, Bhishma, give up forever the love of woman." So he said, so he spoke, And the gods heard, and they sang his name out of the clouds, Bhishma! And flowers came raining down into the city of Hastinapura. And in this moment, the gods also gave him a gift, and it was the capacity, the ability to choose the moment of his own death. So it was decided, and the next day, King Shantanu went to Satyavati. Joyfully he went to her father, and it was decided they would be married. And they were married in the palace garden beneath the spreading mango tree, and the bards sang the songs, and the people feasted and enjoyed. It was a delicious, wonderful moment, and all was well in the kingdom. And before long, Satyavati gave birth to a boy, a beautiful young boy, and he grew up. Years passed, and soon he became a young man. He was schooled in Dharma and in the arts of the warrior and in the wisdom of this world. But the thing is, there was a battle, he got involved, and he died. So that was the end of him. But after a while, Satyavati had another son. Yes, Vichitravirya was his name. Now Bhishma was taking no chances, for he knew that children are the future, that a kingdom must endure in space but also in time. And as Vichitravirya grew up, Bhishma considered this. And when he was a young man, Bhishma went off to fight in a tournament. Now this tournament had a prize, and the prize was 3 princesses. The hands of these 3 princesses in marriage. All of them 3 sisters. He was taking no chances. We're going to have some children in this kingdom. We are, people. So he won the tournament, fabulous warrior that he was. And he brought these 3 princesses back to the kingdom, so that they could marry the young man Vichitravirya when the time was right. But late on that day, the eldest of the 3 sisters, Amba by name, came to Bhishma. She found him there in the palace garden, and she said, Bhishma, you have won me fairly in this tournament, but I must tell you, I have given my love to another. Years ago, King Salva and I, we pledged our love to each other. There is nothing official about this, but the heart is not always official. It speaks true words. Bhishma, please, I ask you, release me from the claim you have on me because of this tournament. Let me go to King Salva, who I love dearly. And Bhishma looked at her and said, Amba, we must honor love. I will honor love. So here and now I give you my word. I release all claim that I have on you. You are a free woman. You may go. You may return to King Salva to be joined with him in love and marriage. Thank you, Bhishma, she said. And off she went, and Bhishma remained there in the palace garden. But the thing is, the next day she came back. It was night by this time. Bhishma was again in the palace garden. He was looking at a fire crackling in an iron pot, watching the flames go up, thinking his own deep thoughts as he watched that fire consuming the wood of the fire. And she came out of the dark. Amba, he said. Yes, Bhishma. Yes, I have come back. I went to King Salva, you see. I went to him and he refused me. He refused me. He said, I am your prize, that I have been touched and handled by you. I told him it was not true. He said, I believe you, but the people may not. I cannot take you up now. You are another man's prize. Despite what Bhishma has said, he is a wise man, but he is a fierce man. He scares me, said King Salva. That's what he said to me, said Amba. So he has rejected me. Bhishma, you must take me back. I need a home in the world. I need a place to be. I need a family to call my own. Please take me back. And Bhishma said, Amba, I cannot take you back. I have given my word. I will not go back on my word. I have released you. You are a free woman. Go where you want. Do what you will. And she said, I am not free. Don't you understand? A woman as myself with a heart like mine in this world, I am not free. I am bound by the views and the judgments of others. King Salva will not have me. You will not have me. I am lost. I have no home, but I will make anger my home. I will make revenge my home. Bhishma, it is said you can choose the moment of your death. Well, all the same, I will find a way to kill you. I will learn the arts of a man. I will become a warrior. I will find you and seek you out, however long it takes. Bhishma, do not forget me. I am your death." And she turned and stalked off into the dark. Bhishma watched her go. And then there was only the fire crackling, its sparks going up into the air. Bhishma looked into that fire, and he thought his heavy thoughts. And he saw how the sparks went up, bright as they were, and how then they went out, and there was only smoke and ash. Well, that was the state of things. And Vichitravirya grew up, a fine young man, and soon it seemed he'd marry these other two princesses. But the thing is, before the wedding could be celebrated, an illness came to the kingdom, and he died. "What?" said Ganesha to Vyasa, who was narrating this story. "Why, there's no children. How can this story go on?" "It's a desperate situation," said Vyasa. "Yes," said Ganesha. "You tell me you're writing a poem, that you've composed a poem describing the whole history of the human race, but there's not many people left. We've got Bhishma, who's made this vow never to have children. We've got the two princesses, who, by the way, I know their names. They're Umbika and Umbalika. They are. Umbika and Umbalika. There they are. And we have no king, except the old man Shantanu and Satyavati. Children are the future. They are the life of this world, the laughter of each moment. Without children, this story cannot go on. Vyasa, I think your poem is done. I think it's over. I'm going to go do something else, find a sweet cake somewhere." "Wait a second," said Vyasa. "It's true. It's a desperate moment. But I tell you, this story will go forward. For in desperate moments like this, well, though I am the composer of this poem, it's time for me to get involved." You're going to enter your own poem," said Ganesha. "Yes, indeed, for we can only speak poems, we can only speak stories that we have lived through. And I have lived in this story. I have walked its hallways. I have smelled the salt flavor of its air. I have dwelled inside this story. And so, I tell you, here and now, I will enter this story, because it was time for me to go to this kingdom and do what was necessary."